In the 487th year of the Silver River, the edge of the planet Karma 7 is a broken place that cannot be found on the map. The sky here is always gray, and the air is full of wasteland emitted from the mine, making people's throats feel like they are scraped by a knife. Lin Hao squatted at the door of his dilapidated house, gnawing on a piece of synthetic bread that was as hard as a stone, staring at the entrance of the mine that was not far away. There were several men wearing imperial uniforms standing there, punching and kicking at a skinny old man. "Old guy, hand over the mines from this week quickly. After a while, I will throw you into the melting furnace." An imperial dog-legged with long cheeks kicked the old man's chest and roared in a slight manner. Lin Hao clenched his fists and his nails were almost embedded in his flesh. He knew that old man was Zhang Dala next door. He was over 50 years old and had to dig mines every day, so he couldn't even eat hot food. But what can he fuck? Pull it up? Don't joke, those few dog legs are hanging around their waists, and a whip can snatch people in half. Lin Hao is just a waste of firewood and cannot even pass the physical examination of the mine. He can only rely on the slaughter to live a life. "Howsy, don't look at it, we can't afford to offend them." A man next to him, who was as thin as a bamboo pole, said in a low voice. This is Lin Hao's only friend, named Xiao Dao, who usually breaks his mouth together. "Do you have to endure it if you can't afford to offend?" They didn't let go of Zhang Dalu. "Will you go to my house next time?" Lin Hao gritted his teeth, his voice full of a grievance. His family was not rich at all. In order to support him, in order to survive, his parents sold themselves to the mine as slaves. There is no audio message now. He guarded this broken house alone, and lived like a dog every day. As he was speaking, a deep sound of silence suddenly came from a distance. Lin Hao looked up and saw several Imperial patrol boats falling from the sky, and the airflow brought to the ground rolled over the dust. The few dog legs stood up straight, and he was bowing as if he had seen the master. "Lin Hao! Come out!" A cold voice came from the mouth of the person who came off the boat. The man was wearing a black military outfit, with a pile of stamps hanging on his chest, and a high sneer on his face. His name is Dirk, and he was the supervisor of the Imperial Principal from Karma 7. He usually likes to take the people on the edge of the planet and start the knife. Lin Hao's heart skipped a beat. He stood up and walked over with his head hard. He knew that it would be absolutely no good for such people to call you over. The debts your parents owe have not yet been cleared. Dirk glanced at him, his temperament as if he was looking at a corpse. "According to the law of the Empire, I have the right to transfer them to the core planet as slaves, and never want to come back. Now, I will give you a chance to hand over 50,000 stars, otherwise, 50,000 star coins?" Lin Hao heard that his brain was almost blown up. He can't even lose 5 star coins in a day, and 50,000 star coins are astronomical numbers to him. "Sir, I really have no money. You can limit it to a few more days." Lin Hao lowered his head and asked for a gift, his voice trembling. It's not that he has no brainstorm, but he actually has no choice. If his parents are really sold to the core planet, then this guy will never have the hope of meeting again. Broad limit? Ha ha. Delk laughed as if he had heard a joke. He raised his hand and slapped Lin Hao on the face. He was so powerful that he slapped him to the ground. "Is this kind of garbage worthy of being arguing with me? Tell you, you can't pay the money before tomorrow, you can think about your parents' departure." Lin Hao covered his hot face, his teeth choked and giggled, and a fire seemed to ignite in his blood. He hated that he was useless, hated that these precious dogs looked down upon others, hated that this dead Silver River Empire. What's the use of hatefulness? He didn't even have the strength to his hands. "Roll it, don't be this eye." Dirk kicked Lin Hao with one foot, turned around and boarded the flying boat, leaving a few dog legs to continue to show off his might. Lin Hao got up and returned to the broken house, forming a group in his brain. He knew that if he couldn't pay the money tomorrow, his parents would be finished. But where did he go to get 50,000 star coins? Xiao Dao is even more indifferent than him, and the people in the mine are even more insecure. "No, I have to find a way." Lin Hao slapped the table and decided to go to the back mountain of the mine to catch up on the air. No one went there usually. There were many abandoned parts of the Imperial ship, and they might be able to sell the money-worthy stuff. As night fell, the mountain behind Karma 7 was pitch black, and only a few searchlights from the mines were swept by. Lin Hao held a slug stick and walked on the mountain road that was deep and clear. All his brains were all about his parents being sold to slaves. The more he thought about it, the more angry he became, and the iron stick in his hand hit the stone beside him, making a sound of crispness. At this moment, the foot suddenly became empty, and Lin Hao fell into a deep pit. The bottom of the pit was covered with gravel, which made him feel pain in his body. What's this? Lin Hao looked over and found that it was a crystal the size of a fist, with a surface like a flowing liquid, and there were countless light spots in it. He reached out and touched him, and the whole person suddenly seemed to be hit by an electric shock, and the sound from the brain seemed to explode a new world. Untold information flowed into his mind like a flood, the power of the multiviolet universe, the space shuttle, and the energy exploded. Lin Hao couldn't digest these things at all, and he felt that there seemed to be an indecipherable force in his body, and his blood began to boil. What's going on? Lin Hao was stunned for a few seconds, looked down at his hand, and with a slap, the air in front of him actually tore apart. He thought, and the whole person instantly appeared from the bottom of the pit on the hillside 10 meters away, so fast that he could not even see the shadow. Both. I'm becoming a Superman. Lin Hao's heart was beating wildly, and he couldn't help but punch a big stone next to him. Unexpectedly, the fist did not touch the stone, and an invisible energy directly blows the stone into powder, and even the ground is smashed into a big pit. At this moment, Lin Hao had only one thought in his brain: I had reached it. Not to mention 50,000 cents, this power is fine if it smashes Dirk's bastard's flying boat. Just as he was so excited, a sound of flying boat engines suddenly came from afar. Lin Hao looked closely and saw several patrol boats flying towards the back mountain, and Dirk's seat was headed. The guy's voice came through the sound expansion device, and it was still the awesome language: Lin Hao, don't think it's okay to hide in the back mountain. I'll catch you today. Lin Hao sneered, and was just worried that there was no place to try new power, so the opportunity was delivered to the door. He took a deep breath, thought for a moment, and the whole person disappeared from the spot, and when he appeared again, he stood in front of the Dirk ship, standing in the air. Dirk, come on, I won't play with you today. Lin Hao yelled, raised his hand and punched him. An invisible energy wave exploded directly, and the air was compressed and hissed. The flying ship had no time to react, and was torn into pieces by the energy waves, turning into a group of fireballs and falling from the sky, smashing into the mountain behind, causing an explosion that shocked the earth. The dog legs of the several flying boats behind were all dumbfounded and ran away in a hurry, but how could Lin Hao let them go? When his mind moved again, he instantly appeared beside another flying boat, kicking it out with one foot, kicking the flying boat in 2.5, as if he was stepping on a toy. This is power. This is my new life. Lin Hao felt very happy when he looked at the dead body of the flying boat. The humiliation of being slapped by Delk just now turned into the pleasure of punching in feet. He finally realized that he was no longer the bully of Wu Chai. However, although Dirk's flying boat was fucked, Lin Hao knew that this guy was not that easy to die. Sure enough, a wolf crawled out of the dead body was Dirk. His face was covered in blood, his eyes were full of resentment, and he yelled with gritted teeth, Lin Hao, do you dare to resist the Empire? You are dead. When I go back, Carlos will definitely send a team to blow up your garbage planet into slag. Will Carlos be the army? Lin Hao narrowed his eyes. He had heard this name. He was one of the cold-blooded rulers of the Silver Empire, one of the culprits who forced the planet to force the planet. He snorted coldly, okay, I've come to him a long time ago and step on your dog things under your feet. Dirk didn't dare to stop and climbed into a small escape boat in the blink of an eye. Lin Hao didn't chase him. He knew that the most important thing now was to save his parents, not to get along with this little man. He turned around and looked in the direction of the mine, and a fire ignited in his heart. His parents were suffering and slaves in the Empire, and he must rescue them as soon as possible. It is certainly not wise to just gun a horse into it. He needs help and information. At this moment, a slight response suddenly came from the shrub next to it. Lin Hao moved over in an instant, grabbed the person hiding inside, and found that the other party was a young woman wearing a broken battle suit, with a look full of rings. "Who are you? Why are you peeking at me?" Lin Hao asked with his eyebrows. The woman took a deep breath and said in a low voice, "My name is Aaron, the one who resisted the army. I just saw you fucking Dirk's flying boat. Are you willing to join us and resist the Empire?" Lin Hao's hand was still pinching Aaron's shoulder, his eyes full of vigilance. This woman suddenly appeared, saying that the rebel army, who knows if it was a spy sent by the imperialists. But looking at her broken battle suit and some obvious scars on her face, she doesn't look like the Empire's noble leg. Resist the army? What's the matter? I'm not interested in playing with you in every family. Lin Hao opened his hand casually, sneered, and turned around and was about to leave. How did he save his parents now and he had no time to deal with the messy things? Aaron gritted her teeth and hurriedly caught up with her voice lowered, "Wait. Lin Hao is right. I know you just fucked Dirk's flying ship. This kind of power. We fight against the army just needs someone like you. The Empire is planning a bigger sarcasm, and Karma 7 is just their experiment." Testing scene? What does it mean? Lin Hao stopped and squinted his eyes at her. This is not simple to hear. Is there any more dirty checkmark in the Empire? Aaron looked around and confirmed that no one had heard it secretly, and then she said in a deep voice, "There is a more terrifying force behind the Empire, not humans, but invaders from the multidimensional universe. They and Carlos tied up their troops, intending to use people from the side planet to do practical experiments and extract certain energy. If we don't resist, the entire Silver River would have been swallowed up by them." Invader of the multiviolet universe? Lin Hao was shocked when he heard it. When the brain suddenly flashed through his power, the strange information that flowed in. What kind of space shuttles and energy explosions are related to what this woman said? He browsed. "You said it's so mysterious, what evidence do you have?" Aaron took out a small piece of data chip from her pocket in the battle suit and stuffed it into Lin Hao's hand. "This is the information we've stolen from the Imperial base, and there are some of their plans. You can see it for yourself. But I warn you that once this thing is exposed, the Imperial will kill you at all costs." Lin Hao looked down at the chip in his hand and hesitated for 2 seconds. He is not a big hero, but if he is really like Aaron said, there is a bigger slander behind the Empire, then his parents' lives may be just a trivial matter, and the entire Karma 7 people will be ruined. He gritted his teeth and said, "Okay, I'll take a look at this thing first. But I'm talking nonsense. I'm helping you either for some reason or to save my parents, so I'll just trample this helping bastard in the Empire under my feet." Aaron's eyes flashed with relief and pointed, "Okay. The base of our resistance army is deep in the mountains, come with me. On the way, I can teach you how to control your power, otherwise you are just a mobile bomb now and may kill yourself at any time." Lin Hao curled his lips. Although he didn't like this woman's temperament, he thought about the scene where he just fucked the stone into powder with one punch, and his heart was indeed a little bit furious. He followed Aaron through the deserted ruins of the back mountain, walked for more than half an hour, and finally arrived at a hidden underground entrance. The entrance was disguised as a pile of broken stones, and there was no sign of a cave inside. After going in, Lin Hao discovered that although this place was old, the equipment was quite complete. Several people wearing simple battle suits were busy, some repairing weapons, some analyzing data, and seeing Aaron come back with a strange face, she kept coming with curious and vigilant eyes. "This is Lin Hao, who just fucked Dirk's flying boat and had the potential to become our warrior." Aaron briefly introduced it, then took Lin Hao to an empty training ground, and gave him a broken helmet. "Wear this, I will teach you how to control your power." Lin Hao took the helmet and put it on. After putting it on, he suddenly saw a bunch of data and virtual screens appearing in front of him, as if he had entered a game world. He was stunned for a moment and asked, "What is this? Are you playing virtual games?" Stop talking, this is a simulator that can help you simulate the battle scene and make you more powerful. Aaron said unhappily, and pointed his fingers on the operation panel next to him for a few seconds. Suddenly, a bunch of virtual Imperial unmanned machines appeared in the center of the training ground, buzzing towards Lin Hao. Collection. Really? Lin Hao instinctively flashed his body, moved 10 meters away in an instant, and avoided the first wave of attacks. But those unmanned machines were like thunder, and the thunders were turning and then slamming over, and the speed was too fast. What's the use of hiding? Use your power to counter. Aaron shouted from the side, concentrate, focus your energy on the fist, and then release it. Lin Hao gritted his teeth, tried as she said, and thought about it, and felt the boiling energy in his body rushing towards his fist like a flood. He yelled, and punched the nearest unmanned aircraft with a sudden punch. He heard only the sound of stealing, and the air was compressed and the unmanned aircraft was blown into a pile of data debris and dissipated in the air. It's great! Lin Hao couldn't help but scream, but before he could finish it, several unmanned machines behind him fired lasers at the same time, forcing him to teleport and avoid, making him busy. Aaron looked around and said, although your strength is strong, it is completely unruly. What's the difference between you and the wild beast? Come again, don't rely solely on your instinct, you will make a prediction. In the next few hours, Lin Hao was fucked by Aaron like a dog, and his body was covered with harm left by virtual battles, and he was so painful that he sucked his breath. But I have to say that although this woman is toxic, what she teaches is really useful. He gradually touched a little door, which could control the energy level, and was even less impatient when teleporting. Okay, let's get here first today. Aaron finally stopped, wiped her sweat, and looked at Lin Hao with a few more approval. You have made rapid progress, but you are still far from the real battle. Carlos of the Empire will have a small head under his army, named Ren. He will bring a team to Karma 7 to patrol. If you can fuck him, not only will you give the Empire a substitute, but you can also prove that you are qualified to join us. Ren? It's just a delivery guy when I hear it. Lin Hao grinned. After finishing the training, he was holding up a sense of slaughter and trying to find someone to train. Tell me, when should I do it? Aaron was about to answer when a harsh police report suddenly ejaculated in the base. A member of the rebel army rushed in and shouted with a blue face, "No!" Ren's fleet arrived early, and now it is above Karma 7, with at least 10 warships and hundreds of unmanned aircraft, as if he knows the location of our base. What? So fast? Aaron's face changed and she turned to Lin Hao. It seems that there is no time to prepare. Do you dare to go directly? Don't dare? I'm waiting for this moment. Lin Hao sneered, removed his helmet, and moved his muscles and bones. He knew very well that this battle was not only a gift to the Empire, but also an opportunity to test his own strength. His parents were still suffering in the mines, and he must let the Empire know that Karma 7 was not something they could control at will. After a few minutes, Lin Hao followed Aaron and several members of the rebel army to a high ground in the back mountain. When I looked up, I saw that the sky was indeed covered by a black press team. The flags on the head were marked with the blood-colored badge of the Empire, which was so powerful. Below the fleet, hundreds of unmanned aircraft were circling like locusts, and searchlights swept over, obviously searching for the rebels. Ren's guy is on the flagship, and he likes to use unmanned aircraft to clear the grounds. Aaron said in a low voice, sending Lin Hao a miniature communication device, I will take people to control unmanned aircraft. You go straight to the flagship and fuck Ren. Remember, don't fight, the Imperial aides may arrive at any time. Don't worry, I'm always clean and neat. Lin Hao received the communication device, grinned, and then thought about it, and the whole person disappeared in place in an instant. When he appeared again, he was already in mid-air, less than 100 meters away from the flagship. The police on the flagship raised their heads and several laser cannons were changing directions, which was a blast against Lin Hao. But he had already prepared, his body was flashing and teleporting like a ghost, and he didn't let a cannon hit him. At the same time, he concentrated his energy, and his body was swollen with multiple powers, clenched his fists, and his eyes were filled with cold light. "Ren, right? Let me get out and die." Lin Hao roared and smashed his fists at the shield of the flag. An invisible energy wave burst out, and the air was torn into sharp birds. The shield shattered like glass, and the flag's body was shaken violently, making a squeaking metal twisted sound. In the bridge, a middle-aged man wearing Imperial military looked at the monitor screen with a blue face, gritted his teeth and shouted, "Where is this guy from? Hurry up, start the main gun and kill him." As the voice fell, the main cannon of the flagship was fully charged, and a thick column of energy light rushed Lin Hao. When he changed into an ordinary person, he had long been ruined, but Lin Hao sneered, and his body flashed, teleported directly to the top of the flagship. While avoiding the attack, he pressed his hands on the ship, and the energy was poured in wildly. A shocking explosion began, and the entire flagship was torn into 2.5 from the middle, and the flames and debris flew everywhere, like a huge smoke flower in the sky. Lin Hao floated in the air, without any dust on his body. Looking at the team that was chaotic below, a disdainful smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. "That's it? The Empire's fleet is not like this." He growled, then teleported to the side of another battleship, punched it out, and another piece of slaughter fell. In less than 5 minutes, he dismantled 10 warships, and the remaining few were not good, so they ran away when they were head-on, and even Ren's body was not in time. On the ground, the rebels were stunned, and Erin clenched her fists and murmured, "This guy is such a monster." Lin Hao fell back to the ground, gasping for breath, and just wanted to say a few words of embarrassment. Erin's urgent voice came from the communication, "Lin Hao, don't be too excited too early. I just broke the communication from the Ren team. They sent a helping signal before they died." Carlos brought the army a main force team and was heading towards Karma 7. Also, the multidimensional invader plan is even more terrifying than we thought. "What plan? Tell me clearly." Lin Hao felt nervous in his heart, and he felt that a bigger crisis was approaching. Erin's voice shook for a moment and said in a low voice, They want to use everyone from Karma 7 as a sacrifice to open a multidimensional crack and call the invaders to the Silver River. If successful, the entire Silver River galaxy will become a dam." Lin Hao stood on the high ground behind the mountain. The pleasure of the Ren team had not completely dissipated. The boiling energy on his body seemed to explode at any time. But the words transmitted from the Irene's contacts were like a basin of ice water, causing his heart to sink suddenly. Use everyone from Karma 7 as a sacrifice? Turn on the multi-vibrating crack? Lin Hao gritted his teeth and repeated it again. The sound was full of disbelief. "I dare to think about this bastard. If I don't put them down today, no one will think about it." Erin's voice came from the communication device, carrying a few anxiety points. "Lin Hao, Carlos's main force has entered the lane of Karma 7, and will be subverted in half an hour. Their firepower is not comparable to a small character like Ren. We must act immediately. The Resistance Army will defend on the ground. You have to push it directly and hold their flag." "Steal the flag? I'm just planning." Lin Hao sneered and looked up at the sky. The gray sky was already covered by a huge group of shadows, and the sound of the engines of countless ships was pressed down like thunder, making people feel swelling in their chests. When he thought, the multi-width force in his body exploded instantly, and the whole person turned into a shadow, directly rushing toward the cloud layer. In the blink of an eye, he had already floated around the air level of Karma 7, and the scene in front of him made his pupils shrink. At least hundreds of warships formed a huge shape, with the flags on their heads 10 times the size of the Ren one. The body was filled with the blood-colored badge of the Empire, emitting a sense of pressure that made people feel cold. Around the flag, countless unmanned aircraft and guards rotated like swarms of bees, and the light of the laser cannon flashed in the dark and was ready to open fire at any time. "Lin Hao, you are such a little mess, really." A low and resentful voice was sent out from the flag-line speaker, with a heavy killing. "I am the army of Carlos. Today I will come to clean up the cancer of your empire. I will give me a lot of power, kneel down and beg for help, or maybe I can still make you die. Carlos? I've been waiting for you for a long time. Lin Hao heard the fire and rushed upwards. When Dirk slapped him, he mentioned this guy. It was this bastard who formulated the law to enslave the planet on the side, which made his parents suffer as much as possible. He clenched his fists tightly, gritted his teeth and shouted, "Stop talking, today I not only want to smash your broken ship, but also make you kneel down and apologize to everyone in Karma 7. Ha ha ha. Overestimate one's own abilities." Carlos laughed wildly, his voice filled with mockery. "A garbage around the planet dares to challenge the might of the Empire? Break him to me." As the voice fell, the main gun on the flagship began to accumulate energy, and dazzling energy beams tore through the air and headed straight for Lin Hao. At the same time, the surrounding guards and unmanned machines also turned on fire at the same time, and the laser network was dense and unobstructed, as if they wanted to evaporate it directly. "That's all that ability?" Lin Hao snorted coldly, and his mind moved, and his body disappeared from the spot in an instant. The energy beams and lasers all swept into the air, and burst into sharp thorns. When he appeared again, he was already directly above the flagship, and his hands pressed his body against the shield, and the multidimensional force in his body flooded like a flood. A shocking explosion occurred, and the seemingly invincible shield was torn to pieces, and the flags were shaken violently, and cracks appeared on the surface. Lin Hao grinned, and did not stop at all. He flashed his body and punched him again, making a big hole directly on the body, and flames and debris flew everywhere. Inside the bridge, Carlos looked at the monitor screen, his face as if it was about to drip. He slapped the table, gritted his teeth and shouted, "What's going on with this kid? Why can his power directly tear off the shield? Hurry up, start the energy core of the backup to fight me." The adjutant beside him replied tremblingly, "It takes 3 minutes for the army to use the core to start. Moreover, his speed is too fast and his weapon cannot be locked at all. Waste. A bunch of waxes." Carlos was so angry that he had no other choice. He could only watch Lin Hao slamming on the flagship like he was dismantling a toy. Lin Hao doesn't care what the other party's reaction is, anyway, it's a pleasure to fall down. He teleported to the other side of the flag, kicked out another foot, kicking a main gun into a wastegate, and then tore it with both hands, pulling off a large piece of metal plate in the body, and smashing it into the next guard as a weapon. The guard was not in time to react and was smashed into a fireball, rushing towards the air level of Karma 7. "Carlos, is it interesting to hide in the turtle? Let me roll it out." Lin Hao yelled, and the sound penetrated the soundproofing layer of the bridge, trembling the ears of the people inside. He knew that this guy was not simple, and it was not enough to just destroy the ship. He had to find out the guy and give the Empire a fierce defeat. But at this moment, a low buzzing sound suddenly came from the inside of the flag, like some huge machine was starting. Lin Hao felt nervous and felt a dangerous breath. He looked down and found that the door at the bottom of the flags was slowly opening, and a dark blue light beam shot out from it, directly slamming the surface of Karma 7. "What's this?" Lin Hao sniffed his eyebrows and suddenly flashed the words Aaron said in his brain, "Do away Skizzer, the invader's body." His heart skipped a beat, and he moved to the side of the light column in an instant, trying to break it with energy waves. But the light column seemed to be completely unaffected. Instead, as he approached, it emitted a slight wave, causing his brain to sting and almost fell from midair. "Lin Hao, don't fight head-on." Aaron's quick voice came from the communication device. "That is the energy field of the multidimensional cleft, which is the same as your power, but it's even more unstable. Carlos has started the stance. Once the cleft is completely open, the invader's body will descend, and we will all be done. What should I do? Seeing this thing swallowing everyone?" Lin Hao gritted his teeth and his brain moved quickly. He knew that it was no intention to dismantle the flagship now, and he had to directly prevent the crack from opening, otherwise his parents and the entire Karma 7 people would become sacrifices. "Speak, the core energy source of the crack is inside the flag, you have to rush in and destroy it." Aaron's voice was filled with anxiety, "But be careful, Carlos must have set up a trap, and his Megastrode is not a vegetarian either." "Train? I want to see what's going on. Lin Hao sneered, thoughtfully, teleported directly to the inside of the flagship, and appeared in a corridor outside the bridge. The police noise around was so harsh that the red light flashed, and it was obvious that the other party had discovered that he had come in. Before he could stand firm, a group of zebra soldiers in heavy war armor rushed over, holding high-energy particle guns in their hands and shooting at him. Lin Hao flashed his body, avoiding the first wave of attacks, and then punched him out. The energy wave directly blew up several soldiers in the front row and the armor was blown into pieces, and the remaining few were scared to retreat. Do you dare to swear me even if you have the ability? Lin Hao snorted and continued to rush towards the bridge, but just turned around a corner and hit an energy wall head-on, and forced him back. He looked closely and found that behind the wall was a tall man in black military clothes, which was Carlos himself. Lin Hao, you really have a way to come to my bridge. Carlos sneered, holding a stick with a gloomy blue light in his hand, his eyes full of coldness, but the game ends here. Although your power is strong, in front of me, it is just a child's move. Stop pretending to be a god. Lin Hao roared with gritted teeth, and the energy inside his body rushed wildly, trying to smash the blocked energy wall with one punch. But this time, the energy wave just touched the wall and was swallowed by a strange wave, as if it had completely failed. He was shocked. This was the first time he had encountered something that could withstand his power. Carlos looked at his expression and smiled even more wildly. Why, you're shocked? Tell you that this stick is a treasure given by the invaders, and can directly absorb your multi-width power. The more you resist, the faster you die. Now, kneel down, maybe I can save your life, so that you can watch Karma 7 become a dam. Kneel down and beg you. Lin Hao's eyes were so angry that he was red. He didn't care about his rights or not. His parents' lives and everyone's lives in this battle are all in this battle. Where can there be a way out? He yelled, and the power of the body was squeezed to the extreme. The whole person seemed to turn into a ray of light, directly rushing towards the energy wall, and rushing it with his body. Gee, with a loud noise, a crack was finally knocked out of the energy wall, but Lin Hao also paid the offer, and his body seemed to be cut by 1,000 knives, which made him almost over. Looking for death? Carlos reacted, and his stud suddenly slapped his pole, and a dark blue energy hit Lin Hao's chest, causing him to fly, and hit the wall of the corridor, smashing a big hole. He could only feel that all his internal organs had moved, and a silk of blood was overflowing from the corners of his mouth, but his eyes did not shrink at all. Come again. Lin Hao growled, stood up and rushed towards Carlos again. This time he was wise and did not directly confront him. Instead, he teleported behind the other party and tried to grab the stick. Carlos's battle experience is obviously not a big deal. The backhand is just an energy wave, which forces Lin Hao to avoid it. You came and I went, and the corridors near the bridge were beaten to pieces, and the energy fluctuations made the whole flag tremble. Although Lin Hao was injured, he relied on the speed of teleportation and fought with Carlos for a long time, and even almost seized the stick several times. Lin Hao, do you really think you can win me? Carlos finally gasped, his face was terrifyingly dark. Tell you that the crack has been halfway open, and the invader's body will surrender at any time. By then, not only you, but the entire Silver River will have to surrender. Super the truth. Lin Hao gritted his teeth and took advantage of the moment when Carlos was distracted. He suddenly teleported to his side, grabbed the stick with one hand and smashed the other directly into the other's brain. Carlos didn't expect his speed to suddenly surge and he hurriedly hid, but his stud was still overwhelmed by Lin Hao. Broken to me. Lin Hao roared, and the last piece of multidimensional force in his body poured into the power stick. He heard a click sound. The thing radiated with faint blue light exploded into pieces. The energy wave instantly lost control, causing Carlos to fly and hit the console of the bridge. Ahem, you actually. Carlos covered his chest, his face full of disbelief, but before he could finish his words, the flags suddenly shook violently, as if they had lost some core power, and the entire body began to tilt towards the surface of Karma 7. Lin Hao gasped heavily and stood up, with no little success in his brain. Because he could feel that a more terrifying atmosphere was rapidly dissipating in the direction of the surface of Karma 7, as if some unimaginable existence was about to break through the space and descend into this world. Lin Hao, crack, the crack still doesn't close. Eileen's shocked voice came from the communication device. The invader's breath is getting stronger and stronger. Our instrument has detected the top of multidimensional waves. Quickly, you must find the crack core, otherwise. Her voice stopped abruptly, leaving only a messy and quiet sound. Lin Hao felt nervous and could not see the injuries on his body. He teleported to the observation window of the bridge and looked down. Only see the center of the surface of Karma 7, a huge blue crack is slowly scattering, and a huge shadow can be seen inside, scattering a suffocating sense of pressure. Is this the invader's body? Lin Hao murmured, his fists clenched, and an unprecedented fighting spirit ignited in his eyes. Lin Hao stood in front of the observation window of the bridge, staring at the huge blue crack on the surface of Karma 7. The shadows in the crack became clearer and clearer, like a group of endless darkness, hidden through the red eyes of a pair of agres, making people feel cold in their hearts when they glanced at them. He clenched his fists, and the force that had been consumed in his body began to slowly recover, as if a group of unyielding fires were ignited in his blood. Invader's subject? I want to see how awesome you are. Lin Hao gritted his teeth, growled, and glanced at Carlos, who was dying on the console. The guy's face was pale, the corners of his mouth were still covered in blood, and his eyes were filled with resentment, but he was no longer able to get up again. Lin Hao, do you think you beat me, and when? Carlos reluctantly snatched a word, hissing like a broken box. Once the invader's body surrenders, you, your family, the entire Silver River, must be buried with you. Ha ha. Close your mouth. Lin Hao kicked Carlos directly, and didn't feel like hearing this bastard's words. He knew that now was not a time of confusion, the crack was being expanded, and every second dragged, the number of people at Karma 7 was one more dangerous. My parents are still in the mine, slaves, waiting for him to rescue him. How can I have time to slander with this guy? He took a deep breath, thought for a moment, disappeared from the bridge in an instant, and when it appeared again, it was already above the surface of Karma 7, less than 100 meters away from the crack. The terrifying breath came over his face, like an invisible hand holding his neck, making him feel a little difficult to breathe. The air around the crack was distorted and the gravel on the ground was sucked in and instantly turned into nothingness, as if it was swallowed by some unknown force. Trouble, is this thing more evil than Carlos's broken ship? Lin Hao gritted his teeth and tried to gather multi with force. He raised his hand and a wave of energy hit the cracker. But the energy wave just touched the edge of the crack, and it was swallowed directly, and even a little wave was not raised. His heart sank, and he felt that this thing was not solved by hard work. At this moment, the communications on the air finally sent Irene's continuous voice. Does Lin Hao hear it? The crack core, at the depth of the crack. There is an energy point. Only by destroying it can the crack be turned off. But the invaders will has begun to interfere with the space. Be careful. Energy story? I understand. Lin Hao growled, and before Aaron finished speaking, he teleported directly toward the inside of the cracker. As soon as I entered the crack, the space around me seemed to have become a group of viscous liquid, and every step forward seemed to be a heavy pressure of 1,000 pounds on top. His eyes were obscured by a group of blue lights, and he could hear the deep murmurs coming from his ears, like some ancient existence in a low voice, making people's brains vent. Pull out my brain! Lin Hao roared, concentrated, and forced the jerk to suppress the jerk. He knew that this must be the invader's subject who was trying to hinder his will. But he was not the one who was bullied by others. His parents' lives and everyone's lives in Karma 7 were all under his shoulders. How could he be destroyed by such a small trick? Through a layer of light, Lin Hao finally saw an energy point scattering strong waves in the depth of the crack. The thing was like a group of beating hearts, with countless blue arcs lying around it, and the energy emitted made the entire crack tremble. He narrowed his eyes and understood in his heart that this was the key. Aaron said. Just smash it and the cracks could be closed. Broken to me. Lin Hao growled, and the multi-width force in his body rushed wildly, clenched his fists tightly, and smashed towards the energy point. An invisible energy wave burst out, and the air was compressed and hissed, but the spot was shaking slightly, but it didn't break. What? Is this thing so hard? Lin Hao was stunned for a moment, but before he could punch again, the light around him suddenly condensed into a huge shadow and rushed directly at him. The shadow scattered a sense of pressure that made people suffocate, and the red eyes were filled with tyranny, as if he wanted to swallow him directly. Come on. I'm afraid of who? Lin Hao gritted his teeth, teleported the first wave of shadow attacks, and then punched the other party's core. But this thing doesn't look like the body at all. The fist penetrates the past and seems to hit the air, without any effect. Instead, the shadow snatched his hand and a blue energy blade directly swept over, forcing Lin Hao to avoid it, and a blood mark was still wiped from his shoulder, which made him suck in pain. Bored, this guy is not right. Lin Hao gritted his teeth and moved quickly in his heart. He knew that head-on battles would definitely not work, and he had to find the weaknesses of this thing. But the shadow seemed to be gone, and the attack became more and more fierce. Each shot brought the power to tear the space, forcing him to avoid it by teleportation, and his physical strength was consumed quickly. At this moment, Irene's voice suddenly came to my ears, and it was suddenly very rapid. Lin Hao, the invaders will, depends on the day, you must, use multiple powers, to jointly, destroy its structure. Otherwise, it will never be beaten. Gongfeng? What does it mean? Lin Hao hid from the shadow's attack and said in a flash. But suddenly a light flashed in his brain, remembering the strange information that came in when he first realized his power. It seems that the information is mentioned that the power of multiple power can not only destroy it, but also creates a certain connection with the space and change the structure. Fight! Lin Hao gritted his teeth and took advantage of the gap between the shadow attack to teleport to the next side of the energy node, pressing his hands directly on it. This time, he closed his eyes and tried to feel the flow of multiple powers in his body, so that it could synchronize with the waves of the nodes. Sure enough, the day began to shake violently, as if it could not bear this kind of co-fish, with cracks appearing on the surface. The shadow seemed to notice something was wrong, and let out a harsh roar, and the attack became even more crazy. The blue energy blade hit like a violent rain. Lin Hao couldn't even hide. After being hit for a few times, he was more and more blood marks on his body, which made him grit his teeth in pain. But he didn't let it go, and the energy in his body was crazily output, and the cracks at the stage finally became bigger and bigger. Give me, explosion! Lin Hao shouted with the last burst of force, and the day finally couldn't bear it. The shock sound exploded and turned into countless light spots to dissipate in the crack. The shadow seemed to have lost its support, and it let out an unwilling roar, which quickly disintegrated and turned into nothingness. The crack began to shrink quickly, and the pressure around it disappeared in an instant. Lin Hao gasped heavily, feeling that his whole body seemed to be exhausted and almost fell from midair. He reluctantly calmed his body and teleported back to the surface of Karma 7. He looked up and saw that the dark blue light in the sky had completely dissipated and returned to the original gray. It's done, I'm really done. Lin Hao grinned. Although he was full of injuries, he didn't feel so happy ever. He knew that the invader's body was fucked and the people of Karma 7 were finally safe. Lin Hao, are you still alive? Away, Erin came over with a group of members of the rebel army, and her face was full of incredible. She looked at Lin Hao's eyes filled with scars. Have you really closed the crack? Did you even fuck the invaders' will? Blank. I said, no one wants to move the person from Karma 7. Lin Hao snorted. Although his mouth was hard, his legs were soft and he almost stood firm. Erin hurriedly supported him and said unhappily, okay, don't be strong. The cracks are closed, and Carlos's fleet has also been destroyed. The remaining soldiers are retreating. We win. I've won. Lin Hao repeated his low voice, and a feeling of inconsistency suddenly surged in his heart. He turned to the direction of the mine, and his brain was full of his parents. It's not over yet, his parents have not rescued them, and the dog things from the Empire have not been cleaned up in full. Aaron clicked a little and said in a deep voice, "Don't worry, Carlos has been captured. We found the slave's control data from his flagstone. Your family, and other people who were captured, will be released soon. The main force of the Empire is over, and the remaining power is insufficient. The Resistance Army will take over the cleaning." When Lin Hao heard this, a big stone finally landed in his heart. He followed Aaron back to the temporary base of the Resistance Army. It took him no later, he saw a team of people being brought in. 2 of the skinny figures were the parents he had been thinking about day and night. Although they were haggard and had scars left by the mines, their eyes were filled with relief when they saw their son. "Haozi, is it you?" Lin Haonyang shook her voice, and the purplish water instantly swept out. Although Lin Hao's father didn't say anything, his eyes were red, and he patted his shoulder, as if he knew it was not a dream. "Dad, Mom, it's me. I've sucked all the dogs of the Empire. No one can bully us in the future." Lin Hao gritted his teeth, held his eyes back, and hugged the 2 of them. He waited for this moment too long, from the wastewood that was slapped by Dirk, to the powerful man who smashed the invaders. Now, it was worth it. A few days later, the ruins of Karma 7 began to be rebuilt, and the rebels officially took over the control of the surrounding planet. Carlos was publicly tried, knelt down in front of everyone, apologized to the people on the side of the planet, and was later imprisoned, never wanting to come out again to show off his power. The power of the Empire was wiped out and the news in the Silver River Gyrus was spread quickly, and Lin Hao's name became the word of every planet. "Lin Hao, now you are the new overlord of Silver River. What are you going to do?" One day, Aaron found Lin Hao and asked half a joke. Behind her, the members of the rebel army were busy rebuilding, their eyes filled with awe of him. "Overlord? I'm not that interested." Lin Hao curled his lips and leaned against the door of his own broken house, gnawing a piece of bread that was no longer hard. "The broken rules of the Empire to help bastards are all for me. In the future, the Silver River will belong to everyone, so who shouldn't want to ride on others again?" Aaron was stunned for a moment, then laughed out loud. "Okay, I didn't expect you to have any ideas. Then we will follow you and rebuild a different Silver River." Lin Hao clicked on the head and looked up at the sky at Karma 7. Although it was still gray, he knew that under this sky, there was no more pressure from the Empire, nor more shadows of invaders. He punched and shot a new world. My parents were busy making meals in the room, and occasionally I sent a few laughs, like the warmth that I hadn't heard in years. Lin Hao grinned, feeling satisfied. He knew that from today on, he was no longer that